Welcome to ScryBabies. I'm Louis Stardust.
I'm Toria the Vast.
This is the ScryBabies podcast, because I didn't say it like that, but that's what we're doing today. It's a podcast. Surprise to anybody listening.
Oh my god, did you know the link that says ScryBabies podcast is the ScryBabies podcast?
Who knew? Today we're going to be talking about a day in the life of the ScryBabies. So we did a little bit talking about us as content creators, how we got started in content, and then also how ScryBabies got started.
Yes.
So we'll give you like a little brief synopsis, but if you want to watch that full video, you can check it out. It is our ScryBabies lore video, and then we also talked about a little bit about being content creators during our podcast that we did with Steve and Ian recently as well, and being competitive content creators in that space. So we'll get into that shortly, but first let's talk about our sponsor for today, which is TCG Player.
Yes, TCG Player this year. We've had so many sets come out, and there's even more coming out. We've had Ravnica Remastered, Karlov Manor. There was a murder there. Murders at Karlov Manor. Alos Thunder Junction, Fallout, and now we have MH3. We have Bloomborough coming out. Dustmorn, we don't know when, but there's a ton of sets coming out. There's a bunch of play boosters, pre-cons, singles. You need it, they got it.
They do have everything. They also have a lot of good options for those singles and those like secret lair cards. If you missed those, you want to get them. Tori said there was Funko Pops apparently on there. They have everything on TCG Player. I think you could shop for comics too if that's your cup of tea. But you can also pick up things like Magic the Gathering, of course. But outside of that, if you play Flesh and Blood, Lorcana, One Piece, there's so much stuff. I know some people play like Grand Archives. There's everything you can think of on TCG Player. So if you want to support us and support them, you can go check out the link in our description and pick up anything that we talked about today. We're going to be talking a little bit about what it took for us to become content creators. And we're going to talk a little bit about like the decks early on the show and how we constructed those. So if you want to pick up anything that we talked about for Magic and other TCGs, check it out on TCG Player.
That's right. And we're also going to give a shout out to our patron. Our featured patron this time is Snapcaster V. Thank you so much for being a patron. Being a patron is one of the easiest ways to support our show. We have tiers as low as $1 US, Token Club, Stickin'
all over the place.
Sticker Club, hand drawn by me. We love to see it. Yeah, come check us out in our Discord. Be a patron today. It's a great place to be.
Snapcaster V also whooped my ass at Magic at Pun City. They were great.
Yeah.
Loved playing with them. Lovely person.
Thank you so much, Snapcaster V.
So yes, we talked a little bit about like the recap. So let's talk about that. So Tori and I became friends online.
Yes.
2022? Online?
2021?
2021?
Think
something like that. Yeah, because in 2022 is when we started ScryBabies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. We're in 2024. It's almost 2025. So we became friends in 2021, we'll say. That seems right.
Sure. Forever. Since birth.
And we became friends like after we started playing Magic, and we have been playing at this point for like 3 years now, I think, right? And we just always had expressed to each other that if we ever made Magic content outside of like the stuff we were doing online, it would be together, just because we felt like comfortable with each other. We had good chemistry. We kind of wanted the same shared goals for what we wanted to do. And so of August of 2022, we kind of just came up with the idea of doing the show. We floated a lot of names around. There was like Dualcaster Babes. There was like silly things. And Tori said ScryBabies. That name stuck. Made a great logo. And fast forward to December, which was the first time we had filmed anything. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because it was so different when we started the show.
It really was. We kind of just were like, we've got 2 cameras and a dream.
Yes.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, we didn't actually have a space to record. We originally started filming at LGS's. So the first time was Elm City Games in Connecticut. That's where I live. So we got a lot of people from the from the New England area and had them come to that LGS and film with us.
Where did DMV come from?
DMV is DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Oh, so I thought you meant like the DMV. And I was
no.
Why?
I always think that because that's like the tri-state-ish thing. And then like New England has Connecticut, Massachusetts, and whatever else.
Okay. I was like, interesting.
Driving over there. No. So I remember we were like really excited because we had also just came from filming Prof Show. And then we went and filmed with the Spike Feeder. So we had done a couple appearances on shows.
Yes.
Our first ever episode that we did record was at the Spike Feeder's place. And we took that episode back. That was our first episode that aired. It was a CDH game. It was great. But the first time we filmed was in December. We, I think, overestimated how much we could film in a day. We definitely needed 2 days.
We had like a paper that we wrote on in marker. And we're like, all right, we're going to play, I think we wrote down like 8 Commander games.
Yeah, because we wanted to try and film like 2 with each guest that we had to be safe.
Yes.
I think we could have done 1 or 2 more if 1, we had been more prepared with our gear, 2, the setup was quicker, and we had an extra hour in the store because it closed at like 8 or something.
Yeah, we were like there early. We got there, I think, at like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And we're like, we'll be done by 5. It was like 11 p.m. We were like, oh, we got to go.
Yeah.
And we didn't realize how long.
I actually think it was earlier than that because the store closed early that day.
They did.
Yeah, so we definitely...
It felt late.
It felt late. It was definitely a long day, which we'll talk about the set days because it's a lot. I had been on a lot of shows where it was long filming days. Like I went on Joe's show, Tabletop Jocks, and other things. So I was just used to a long day. And I was like, yeah, this is like how it's going to be. And we're going to film way more episodes. And we did it. But we did film some like great episodes with great players. You can see the change of quality as time has gone on, and it's been a lot of like learning stuff. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk to you about what we did wrong and what we did good and what kind of changes have happened over the past year, because we have a lot of people who do ask us about how we got into content, how we started the channel, what the best gear is, things like that. So we can kind of give you the like, we did a lot of things on as much of a budget as we could.
Yes.
And, we talk often about like we did not pay ourselves out the first year at all. Everything we did was just, it out of our own pockets. And then eventually we started Patreon and those things helped us and getting sponsors helped us. But everything was just like, me and Tori don't edit, so we couldn't do anything in-house. We had to try and find editors and all these things. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. But I do think it's interesting that we've had so much growth in a year.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I at least anticipated the growth that we did have.
Yeah.
I remember when we first started, we're like, yeah, we'll like record some gameplay and we'll at least like 1 episode a month.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. We're on a bi-weekly schedule. We did try doing more than that. It got a little overwhelming. Now it's the podcast, so that kind of fills up for like almost a weekly schedule. And our first episode too, like it popped off. I didn't think that many people would be watching. It's like our second or third most viewed episode, of course, right? Because it's the first one, but
yes,
people really liked it. So that was a very good feeling to know that we could make so many people happy. We have a question from Gillionaire. So we're going to take some questions from our patrons and then also fit them into the storyline today of what we're talking about. Gillian asked, what gear do you use and what does the editing process look like? Do you hire editors for all the editing or do you do some yourselves?
This is something that I feel like we get a lot of when people talk to us about content creation is, what do you guys use? How do you do it? What's the timeline like? What is this? What is that? The cameras. So we use these Sony ZV-1 cameras. They have some pros and cons. I do think it is a great camera at a good price tag. Mm-hmm. And again, we did start this show out of our own pocket, so without having to spend like $3,000 on a camera, that was a easier choice to make.
It's also nice that we own them and we don't have to rent gear and worry about the renting cost and like the big cameras, because trust me, I would love like a nice big camera that would be a little bit better, and maybe we'll upgrade one day.
One day. But for now we got these. They're around $800 to $900 when we got them. The ZV-1-2 came out, so now I think they're around $670. One thing I will note for a tip for content creation and for getting your equipment like this, opening up a card at a place where you can get these sometimes helps. Like I opened up like an Amazon credit card to buy one of the cameras, and I got like a $200 off the coupon for it, just for opening the card. So if you're able to like open a card for like Best Buy or wherever you're getting some gear, sometimes it saves you some money. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we did a lot of research into like what the best cameras were. It seems like Sony is going to be the best for us and what we're looking to do. They did make a new Sony that does have like a changeable lens, which is something I'm really interested in for us, especially because I want like a good crisp overhead for our cards. And we talked to a lot of people who do vlogging, and also Jim from the Spike Feeders recommended these. And I guess my biggest problem is like the overheating, but that happens with any camera. So it's taken us almost literally a year to get it right, where the settings don't overheat the camera too much. We just did a filming date in LA that was 2 days long, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And the camera only died once, and it was because it wasn't plugged in. So these are always manually plugged in with a wire to, an outlet so that the battery can constantly go. The other problem with them is because on the bottom of the camera is where the battery and the memory card are. You can never like leave that flap open because they're on the tripods, because they're screwed in. So that part overheats a lot. And so that's probably like my biggest complaint about the cameras. But since we, got those tripod stands, we also mounted our overhead to the ceiling.
Yes.
So it's just like dangling. I had to make it so my fan can't turn on in here.
Yeah. So we have an overhead mount for the camera that points down. It's way better than having, like, we used to have like poles that hold onto the camera. They wouldn't move if people bumped into them. It was a nightmare. So much easier to get the mount. It was on Amazon. It was like $30. You just drill some holes into your ceiling. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
But what we liked about it too is because of the way it screws in, the bottom isn't compressed, so there's more airflow, so it doesn't overheat as much. Yeah. So that was our big learning thing, is constantly having to worry about these cameras overheating and dying.
I will say we'll probably make like an Amazon like list underneath this video so you can see everything we bought. The overhead we did have was great. It like folded down really nice, but it was shaky, like Tori said. We saw this weird one on IKEA. I'm wondering if it will work right, because it was like one that people put on tables to do like centerpieces, and I'm like, it's kind of the perfect like shape for a filming one, so I kind of want to buy it and test it and see if we can use those for when we travel, because it looks like it's collapsible. But that's mostly the info on our cameras. Let's talk a little bit about the mics.
Right. We had two kinds of microphones that we've used. The first ones that we had were the, what was it called? Zoom.
The Zoom H6s.
H6.
And a lot of people use this. I think Jinklors use this on their set too. It's actually like a really cool individual channels for each person, so you can change their gains as you need to. And then it hardwire plugs into a mic that you use. So we use a Rode mic for those. The only problem I had with them is that they take physical batteries. So unless you're having rechargeable ones, which we spent a lot on rechargeable batteries, that's kind of a pain in the ass. And the other problem I had was sometimes one channel would get messed up, but it was really hard to fix it.
Yeah.
And one of our channels messed up so much that we couldn't use the H6 anymore. But I think that was like not that expensive. I think it was under $100.
Yeah, it wasn't that expensive.
It wasn't that expensive either. And it also has a separate mic on the top too, so you can just use that as an extra microphone for like
a whole space,
for the whole space too. So there is a lot of good features on that. But that was like my one complaint, was like it's a little hard to do the batteries and some other stuff. But we switched our mics. We're still using the same little Rhodes that are like for the chest. I will say we had 2 of them die on us in the past year. They're thin wire, so I wouldn't be, it's not a huge deal. They're not too expensive, so I don't mind buying those. For us, we got the wireless ones.
We got the wireless ones. They charge. They have been fantastic. They also plug in directly on top of the camera, which is really nice. So it's easy for you to like link up what footage is going to go with what. It saves it onto the same memory card at the same time. It was just another thing we didn't have to worry about keeping track of as much too, like file transfer wise.
Yeah.
So we definitely are loving those. It's also just nice to be able to charge them without having to fumble around with AA batteries like it's the 90s.
And it's also like more mobile for our guests, so they can like turn off their thing or go. We can unplug it. It's a little more flexible in that way. My only complaints are the little screen is really difficult to use, and to do individual channels, you can't really adjust the gain as much as you would like on there. So when you do get the audio on the camera, there's a left port and a right port. So if me and Tori are sharing one, Tori's on the right, I'm on the left. Those are individual things for our editors. They have to slice it off of the video. It doesn't come as 2 individual audio sources. Right. So that's like a little complicated, but once you get it, it's not too bad. And I do think they're like really fantastic for anybody who does content creation as far as like short form content goes. You always see people with the little squares talking into them at conventions and stuff. So if you want something that's a little bit more mobile, those are great. They have a little fuzzy tip you could put on them so that the wire, your mic isn't nude, I guess is the way to, it's not bald.
No nude mics.
Yeah. So it helps with the audio. And so I think there's a lot of good benefits to those in general, but they have also been a learning process. As you could tell, we finally got that settled, and we use these Shure mics too. This is the last one.
And we love these. These are great.
I'm using which one is this? The SM7B. This was my original mic that I had for podcasting before. We picked up one of these. It was like $100 cheaper. We wanted to try them out, and we'll definitely have to pick up 1 or 2 extra for when we have guests too.
Yeah, but they do sound great. They sound really crisp.
They are the best podcasting mics for sure. Definitely worth the money. I've had mine for, I want to say 4 years, and it's been great. No issues with it. Very easy to use. We plug them into a red Focusrite. That thing is great. You could do one for 2. I think you do up to 4 on the channels as well. And you could do each individual gain, which is nice. So I like those a lot.
Yeah, I love these. They sound great.
We looked at them too for gameplay as just like a definite way to know our audio will be good.
Yeah.
Because they're so good. My concern is that they're so big.
They're very
I don't
big.
know
They're
if
very
people
clunky.
will care if they're in frame, which if that's a thing that bothers you or doesn't bother you, let us know in the comments, because that's great to know. But that is a possible option. I think it's a safe option. And then I also saw some people do the big, large road bikes above for individual people. So if you want something that's like this above without having to be like in frame, that's another option you can do as well. We got mics, we got cameras. Let's talk about lights. This is new for us.
Camera, action. Lights. So in general, we have our set lights. We have the ones that are like photographer lights. They go on a little stand. We also just use the lighting that's in the room. Fortunately, in the new studio space, we have some recessed lighting, and we also have light on fan, and they're dimmable.
Yeah, they're dimmable,
nice.
Which has been like the nicest thing. Right now we have just ours and one on me because it's a little bit darker on this side, so it kind of helps out there. But we're looking at some mountable ones that we want to put on the ceiling just to be like, all right, they're ready to go for recording. The way the studio's set up right now, this is the wall where we do the podcast, and we'll show again some B-roll of that. And then in front of us is where we do ScryBabies for gameplay, which you can always see. Tori sits in the seat, and Tori's on the side too. You could see the shelf behind her, the little bookcase that was from Tori's house that now lives in our studio.
That is now here.
So that was kind of like an easy way to make this room work for everything. And then the other thing I use, we haven't used these in a while, but they are a good easy one if you want to pick them up. They are RGB F7 pocket lights. So these you can get in a set of 2. I think they're like $160. They may be less than that. This is what I use for just doing content creation for modeling and stuff because they're pretty bright lights. I won't put them on you. But you can also, it's hard to do off the top of my head, but you can change all the colors too. So you can do more of like a yellow light if you wanted to, but you can also do like full-on RGB brightness goes up and down. So these are really great if you want something that's affordable. They do have whatever these things are to mount them. What would you call them? Like the spiral
little holes.
Pilot holes. You put it in the hole and then you screw it on. So these are great too if you want something that's like a good one.
A good one.
Yeah, a good one. Those are
a good one.
Ones. Also, we can just talk about our table real quick if you want to.
Yes, the table that we use to record is from IKEA. I think it's called like the Langen or something like that. I don't know. It is a white extendable table that came with a leaf from IKEA, and it's fantastic.
One as a kitchen table.
I bought it for the kitchen table. We filmed in my kitchen.
We were like, this is great.
During MagicCon Philly.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, this is a good table. We should buy this for the studio. And we did. It's great because it fits all 4 playmats.
Yeah, it fits all playmats really nicely. It gives us extra room to put some stuff off screen so you're not seeing all of our tokens, dice, drinks like that. I also have the table for myself upstairs, and so it's a great table. Also super affordable. It was not a lot of money, so that's a great one if you want to pick it up. And then we just have some really basic like chairs. Make sure your chairs are comfy for your guests, man. They're going to be sitting for hours. Like our guests might sit for like an hour and a half and then come back for, another hour and a half for 3 hours. We sit in them for our set days, which is like 11 to like 9 sometimes. And so
it is. Yeah. Make sure you got a cushion.
Yeah. Good cushion for your booty is worth it. I think that's most of our set stuff.
Yeah, I think that's most of the equipment.
I think it's most of our equipment. Another thing too is you want to make sure if you are in a room that is wood floors that you have a nice big rug to help with the sound. We're still working on soundproofing. We do have these fabric squares over here that were just like a checkerboard pattern. We're planning to do another row of those too. This helps a lot with sound. We also have foam that is on the corners of our ceilings, but not enough. I've been thinking about putting them on the ceiling, but I'm worried about them being too dark, so I want to look into that. But definitely making sure you do as much foam as you can. There's also some like aesthetically pleasing foam now that's like hexagons and like cool stuff, so you can do patterns if that's your thing.
Cool foam.
It is so important. I think people will deal with like a video not looking as like nice, right? Like not the highest quality camera, a good camera. Yeah. But the sound is probably the most important thing. The sound is the
most important thing. You'll notice we had a lot of comments on our earlier episodes of people saying like, oh, there's a lot of echo. The sound sounds kind of like bouncy, or it sounds like your guys are talking in a can. And a lot of the time it's because of soundproofing. You know, if we're both, if it's a hot summer day and you have the air conditioning on, sometimes you can hear it, sometimes picks it up.
Yep.
And it's just hard to control the echo of a room.
It's very hard. And with that, it's like, our cameras are great. Like, I love our cameras. It would be nice to get like a higher tier camera. They work great. Our faces are really clear on them, but they're not like the #1 camera out there. They work great for what we need to do. So we can always upgrade those. But right now our big thing was figuring out our sound. So we're doing that. So Zach asked us about editing. They said, for editing, I'd love to see some tips and tricks for editing gameplay. I'm working on editing some gameplay myself, and it's super time consuming, and we would love to see some tips, tricks, advice, and simplifying the process. Mod, if you would like to, our editor, you are more than welcome to insert a tidbit about that if you would like to hear.
Hey everybody, this is Editor Dan, aka Moderately Anonymous MTG. So some quick tips for editing gameplay content. First of all, I do everything that I do on a free video editing software called DaVinci Resolve. There is a paid version of it, but everything you see on ScryBabies is done on the free version. One of the best pieces of advice I can give you no matter what program you're using on is take some time to reset your shortcut keys on your keyboard. Get used to what all of the different keys do, what their functions are, and then map them out in a way that just makes sense for your hand ergonomically. That's going to save you a ton of clicking and mouse dragging time. And then my other biggest piece of advice would be to continue to use the same save file that you use for your gameplay editing every single time that you edit an episode. You're going to have your visual assets saved, you can have dedicated vocal channels with all of your audio presets saved, and maybe most important for gameplay editing, you're going to have all of your card files saved in the same place so you won't have to continue to re-upload them. And eventually you're going to have a big library of all of the cards that you're pretty much ever going to see in Magic. That's more so true of CEDH games where the meta tends to be a little bit tighter. If you're doing primarily casual gameplay, before you even start putting files into the video editor, I would go ahead and download everyone's deck list from Moxfield. You can get all of the PNGs of all of their cards, and then you'll have access to every single card that someone can play in the channel. I could go on for hours and hours, but those are just some of the quick ones.
Our editor right now is Modanon.
Moderately Anonymous MTG.
You might know them from YouTube. They do the greatest CDH content in the multiverse. They are also a very good friend, and we enjoy playing games with them. They've been on the channel before. They do all of our editing currently, so they edit the podcast and our YouTube, and It's very different styles of stuff, but they make it work very well.
That's right. So with gameplay, that is something that I feel like we ourselves knew we would have to outsource because editing gameplay is a lot different than editing your standard TikTok or Instagram video or even just a sit-down video in front of a green screen. You know, I could probably turn on my camera and record a video and maybe learn how to edit some things here and there, but bouncing around 3 different cameras with 4 different audios and also trying to make sure it looks pretty and captures everything going on is definitely an incredible skill to have. And we wanted it to look great, so it's easy to follow, which is why we... Ice cream truck. Which is why we had Modanon take over our editing, and it's just so much easier to have a professional handling that for you.
I think also, too, like, we're on the base level editing. There's, like, little jokes here and there. It's not, like, the craziest. It's not, like, animations and big things. And even then, I feel like the minimum I've ever seen a video was 13 hours. Like, that's a lot of time where, like, we don't have that time because we are filming. We are, you know, Tori's doing token art and sticker art for the show, making thumbnails. I'm doing a lot of behind the scenes, like, booking things for the show, too, and writing podcasts. So the two of us have a lot of work on top of our own day jobs that we're doing. So outsourcing an editor has been great. Trust me, I would love to learn how to edit just because I think it's a fun thing to do. I did make some YouTube videos in the past. They were not up to par with like what I would like for editing, but I know it is something that I enjoy doing. But we could talk a little bit about like our process of like getting it. We've been having struggles with memory cards, which has been the biggest thing.
Yeah, we just recently switched to the like the tough memory cards. They're called like tough something.
Yeah, we'll post them on here and we'll also put
post
them in
a little
the description
picture.
too.
They've definitely been working a lot better. They are able to hold up to a lot of 4K footage, which is something that you also have to pay attention to when filming. 4K is the crisp, clean, best thing to use, especially when you're reading these tiny little cards.
Yes. And also too, they're like Sony made, so they're like made for your camera. We one time purchased like extra batteries that weren't Sony made and they like destroyed our camera.
Yeah, they're not good.
We've had to buy one extra camera. Which sucked because again that was like hundreds of dollars that we lost on a thing too. Definitely worth looking at is a good high quality memory card. Those things take forever to export, so be sure that you have lots of time to export them. We put them into a drive right away. Downloading them to the computer is like the safest thing, or a external hard drive I would highly recommend, which we do have. We just never do that.
Never use it.
It's fine
Because we're stupid.
But it is really hard to export them. Like I have to leave my computer running all the time.
You have to leave your computer on for like days sometimes just to get all the footage in. And it's also important to know, a good tip is when you are exporting your footage, before you export it off of the memory card, you can name the files on your memory card, which is an easy way to keep track of what every file is, so that way you don't accidentally duplicate something or accidentally erase anything.
Yes, that's important.
So yeah, that's a whole other topic about being super, super organized.
Yes. Yeah. And we we could talk a little bit about the process, but there's not too much we could talk about for editing. We give as much info as we can. If you don't feel qualified to edit, make sure you look for a good editor who understands Magic the Gathering and what you're looking for, because you could hire any editor to do like this kind of content, but if they don't know what you're talking about for gameplay, it might be hard for them to like represent the stack and do things like that.
Yeah, or know when to pan to who.
Yes, for sure. All right, so we talked a little bit about our equipment. Let's talk about a general shoot day. So a regular shoot day is kind of different for us because we've had the experience of, shooting for the podcast. We've had the experience of shooting here for the show. This is technically our second studio. And then we also had shot outside of the house where we shoot right now.
Yes.
So we just had a really great day in LA. I think I took some little clips and some pictures, so we'll put them up on there. We were able to, because our gear is so small, bring everything with us except for lights and an overhead rack, which we rented from one of my friends who's a photographer. And that was great because it was somebody local that I knew, which saved us a lot of money versus renting from a place in LA.
Right.
So maybe if you have photography friends, check them out if you're ever looking for stuff to borrow or rent. Maybe you can get gear that way. Yeah, so the general day is, these usually have blankets on them that I put on so my cats don't attack our furniture, which is
correct,
which is important on top of knocking the stuff over. So general day for podcasting is coming into the studio, just cleaning up our day-to-day stuff, setting up the mics because these aren't always here because as you can see, you see some of the background while filming for ScryBabies. We set these up, hook them up to the Focusrite, plug them into the PC so we can record, and then it's just about setting up these lights and cameras. So podcast day is great.
Podcast is easy peasy.
Each
Gameplay
podcast is like an hour long roughly, and we sit down, we do 2 of them for the month. This month we have 3, so we're doing them back to back. The harder part is like writing those podcasts. That takes a lot of time to kind of get like the flow of what we're doing. But when we do a regular day
Regular day. Yeah. Regular day is a lot. So for our shoot day, we typically try to, let me just see if there's anything in here.
There's not too much. It's just kind of like on our shoot day, our call times are usually like 11 or 12 for guests. So we try to be here earlier is the main thing.
Yeah, we try to be here earlier. We try to, like when we went to LA, we tried to figure out ahead of time what the pods were going to be. Basically ask our guests, like, hey, what decks were you thinking of playing? Just so that we can kind of like match the vibe of what everybody's playing. Have our decks picked out. That way that we're ready to get into the next game. We don't have to have that weird conversation of like, well, what are you playing? Well, what are you playing? We just know. And we're ready to jump into it. A lot of people think that a commander day, shoot when you're shooting a game takes like 45 minutes to an hour. It does not. It takes a lot longer. An hour is like chef's kiss, but that does not always happen.
That's our CBH
yeah,
day. Maybe it pops up.
But yeah, a set day, usually we prepare to be working all day. It can last all day. So we usually come in ready with our decks prepared, have some snacks on site, some drinks, make sure that we take a nice break in between.
So a typical shoot day is we tell people to get here for 11 to 12. We wake up earlier than that. We set up, you said some snacks and drinks that we always have that on site. And then our pods, we usually film anywhere from like 4 to 6 games, unless it's like a short one. Like if we have somebody flying in, we probably just have them do 2 in like a podcast episode or something. But when it's one of the shoot days, which we'll get into our guests and all that stuff, those can be longer. Most of the time they're 2 days, depending on what we're doing, just to get as much as possible.
Right. And we usually try to make sure we have like time set aside. Like you always want to make sure you have like a 5-minute break so you have to go to the bathroom, get a snack, get a drink in between each game. And we also try to account for issues that can come up. Sometimes cameras overheat. Sometimes game is run a little late.
Yeah, for LA, we did 4 games a day. We started at 11, and then I counted for an hour and a half for each game with like a 5-minute break in between. And then, we went to like an hour after what I expected for most of those.
Yeah.
Which we definitely need more than 5 minutes. But like for our guests, they're filming one game, then they get an hour plus break because they're not filming the next game. Usually it's somebody else that pairs off. So they get that break time. Mm-hmm. For me and Tori, we're like, let's grind them out as much as possible so we could just do that. We could
try to get everybody out so that they can get to things that they got to do.
Yep. So that's kind of where like we say 5 minutes, but you definitely need more than 5 for sure. And we'll talk a little bit about like the onset stuff in a minute.
We have a question from Olson34. And the question is, I think I'd love to know about how you went about collaborations with other content creators, with new players always trying to break into the space. Did you find it easier when people reached out to you, or did you try to get with other people first before trying your own thing? I think as people grow older and other friends move on and are no longer playing, making friends as adults gets harder.
Yeah, I think we were lucky to have some great collaborations before we got started.
Correct.
And I think being in the scene for a little bit and creating stuff as content creators made it easy for us to be like, we're trying a show, like come see this thing.
Yes, we both kind of were lucky that we also had like our own channels where we had like our own connections that we've harbored with other people in the community.
Yeah.
So people kind of knew us as individuals before ScryBabies, which definitely helped people want to come hang out and be on the show too, because it's like, oh,
I know they're safe.
I know them.
It's like,
I know who they are. I know it will vibe together well. It's not just like, who are these two random people asking me to come on their show? Like they knew us already because we already kind of had our foot in the door, which is super helpful.
Like, you know, we were in a good position where we had a following, but if you don't have that yet, then I think just being like a good member of the community and like showing up for channels and like being present in those things, like I would watch somebody and be like, oh, that guy is always commenting on my stuff. I'm gonna check out what he's doing because he's like super nice and I enjoy his content, or I enjoy the funny things he posts. Like maybe I'm gonna check it out that way.
Yeah.
So I would always recommend just trying to like really like sell yourself on there. And it doesn't have to be aggressive. Like you don't have to be on everything doing it, but just like be yourself and doing that, I think is a great way to showcase to people who you are. For as far as like collaborating with other people too, it was really, we shot our shot a little bit this year.
We did. We reached out to, you know, people and said like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if like, you know, we were on your show or you were on our show or you just came out to like play Commander with us? Like, well, wouldn't that be fun? And to our surprise, some people were like, yes.
There's also too, like, which somebody asked if how we find our guests and secure talent and stuff. We'll talk about that. But like making sure like when people are in Philadelphia or in the tri-state area, like saying to them like, hey, if you're ever on this coast, we would love to have you. We would love to be, you know, to sometimes people will come, like we just had the Nitpicking Nerds here. So we did a gameplay episode with them and then we did something for their channel too. So kind of switching for other content creators and their channels is like a great way to collab in a way that like works for everybody. So at the beginning of each year though, Tori and I kind of go and pick our like top 5 guests, and that's not anything particular. It's just like 5 people we really want to have on this year. And a lot of the time we pick similar people, or we're like, oh, I have this person, you have this person too. Okay, cool. Like that's a definite for us.
And it's not like pick 5 people who are cooler than everybody else. It's kind of like we try to source people where I feel like a lot of people complain like, oh, I see a lot of the same creators on a lot of the same shows all the time, which like we get that we try to have people who are, you know, established, well-known.
Yeah.
And it's not even like in a cloudy way. It's just like you're super helpful and friendly to the community, so we want to have you on.
Yeah.
And we also want to work with you because you're a great member of the community. But we do also try to, you know, get other people on the show who are maybe underrepresented or smaller content creators and, you know, anybody else too. But a lot of the time sourcing guests is also maybe want a guest from a new perspective, or this person's really funny and really good at TikToks, and I think like having them on the show would be really fun because they seem like a really cool individual, or if this person's from a different side of the community and I think they could bring maybe their crowd to this side of the community. So we try to go through and see, you know, what would everybody like to see and what would be a nice fresh thing for the eyes.
When we started to, we talk about all the time, is it is a very male dominated space for Magic, and there was like EDH Hijinks was doing gameplay, Good Luck Have Fun was also doing gameplay, and then there was women on YouTube who were doing Magic content but not a lot of gameplay other than like Arena. And so for us, we wanted to be a women-led channel who showcased, you know, people of color, who showcased women in Magic, who showcased, and granted, there's a lot of dudes in our channel, and we love them, and they're great Magic players too, but we make sure that we're finding members of our community, like Tori said, that are just good people, impactful, fun people that we enjoy playing with, and we'll bring that like kitchen table Magic feel that we like to have at the table and wants to make jokes with us, because like we're not the most family friendly. We definitely say some like cursed jokes when we're playing, and so finding people that vibe with that or not afraid to be silly. I know a lot of people have come to us in LA and they're like, can I curse on this set? Can I say this? Because like they're used to other filming, and we're like, yes, you can say a bad word.
You may say a bad word.
You may say shit. That is okay. But yeah, so we kind of go through like our top like suggested guests. And last year we had our first guest that we flew out, which was Ken, Stacked EDH. And that was just because we love Ken.
We love Ken.
We love Ken. Those episodes did really good. You guys love Ken too. We do ask in our community tab on YouTube, especially for guest suggestions, because those guest suggestions are way different than like what Twitter says, because there's a different following everywhere for different Magic people. So we asked YouTube because there's a lot of YouTube channels and we want to see like those type of guests come on, and we made notes of those. This year we're flying in 2 guests so far.
so far.
And we might have some more.
We're trying to get more. We have some, yes, that sounds cool, locked down. We just got to make the time.
And when I mentioned earlier, too, is like, we never paid ourselves on the first year for ScryBabies, and like we're still like figuring things out with that. And I would love to be in a position one day where we could like compensate people fully, but like our whole thing is just like doing our best with what we got. Most of these people are trading with us, which is very helpful and is wonderful because we're doing content for them and vice versa. So flying out guests has been like our first like big step in doing things like that, which I think has been really nice.
This is the first time that we're like doing the whole thing, like, hey, we're going to fly you out. We're going to prepare some stuff. We're going to have stuff ready to go when you get here, which feels really cool. But it's really hard.
It is
and
really
it's
hard.
Expensive. And the cost of things today is just insane, as everybody knows. And like we were saying, we don't even pay ourselves really. So it's like budgeting goes into that. That also plays into the talent pool. A lot of people I know will ask and say, like, how can I be on ScryBabies? I really want to be on your show. And I always tell people too, like, if you're local and close by, that helps, because if we don't want someone to have to spend a lot of their hard-earned money to come to be on our show if we can't help out.
Yeah.
You know, so that's another big thing, is just being in close proximity really helps with us source guests.
I also think there's a misunderstanding of like what the YouTube payout is. Like we get like not a lot of money every month from YouTube. Our sponsors basically cover our episodes, like the editing cost of our episodes, and then our Patreon money goes to like everything else that we need. So our gear, our like on-site food and drinks for guests, any other like expenses that we have,
going to MagicCons, going to
MagicCons,
events. A lot of these conventions that you see, you know, your favorite content creators at, a lot of the time they are not paid to be there. They are booking those hotels and flights and cars and paying for their own food. And we are very fortunate to have supportive fans and people that support the show, and they basically fund us to get to these things so we can go hang out with more of our fans.
Do more and like showcase what we're doing. Quick note while we're talking about that, free way to support us is like, comment, share these videos when they go live. Not free way to support us, monetizing and like helping us out. Patreon is always number one. Bonfire, support us on there.
Our merch.
Do all of our affiliate links for our sponsors that we have and showcase to them that you love us, because it helps us keep that sponsorship going. Those are really great ways to help out us and any other content creators.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically like what our set day is like. Also too, I want to note, people don't like when we play the same decks a lot.
They don't. That's another great topic to bring up. People get bored of the same decks all the time. I played Kali like twice on the channel, and someone's like, you always play that deck. And I was like, I really don't, but okay. So we're constantly building new decks. We use a lot of playtest cards because we have to. We're printing decks all the time to try to keep things fresh, new, and exciting. I have my partner Steve, who's constantly helping me build decks on Moxfield and building new stuff to bring on the show, because I need a new deck.
It is expensive. We made like, I think 5 or 6 new decks when we were in LA, and we basically said like, we can play these twice and then probably not anymore on the channel. There's like some stuff that maybe didn't get its like showcase that we could play again in the future, but it's really hard to play the same deck 4 or 5 times before people get tired of it. I think it works a little bit in CDH, just because that's like, the deck's always going to be kind of like doing the same thing, but not all the time. You really got to switch it up. Obviously, we're also, you know, ambassadors for Magic, and I spend a lot of my own money on Magic cards and stuff like that. So it's nice to be able to like break apart a Precon or like go through cards and like build decks. And honestly, I think that's been like a big save of the channel, because I don't know like if we would have been able to like constantly do the Precon games, because like they add up in cost.
They're like not cheap.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing them all the time.
Yeah, we're doing them all the time and stuff too. So I think that's like a very big blessing, which was really great. But it is a lot to start up a channel is my point with that. We also want to just note that Ian and Steve are our on-site hands. So this really helps with us with our recording days. Most of the time it's Ian, sometimes Steve is here too. And that really helps with like establishing, like taking breaks. Ian's also kind of like our judge on site. He does miss some stuff sometimes, that happens. But he's able to look at like Gatherer or like help us make sure we're announcing triggers correctly, or giving us like judge calls, like anything that we need with that, which sometimes we'll definitely be like, okay, I have to take this thing over because there's like 50,000 creatures and like my math is wrong, or like I have to declare this thing for the stack properly. So like we'll have to sit and be like, okay, how do I say it again? Let's make sure this is clean so that it translates very well. And that's Ian's main job. So every episode of ScryBabies, Ian is like against the wall, just like helping us with judge calls, making sure we say things properly, making sure our board states are represented well. And that's like his main job. for us.
Yeah. I feel like we also see a lot of comments on not just our channel, but on a lot of channels. A lot of people will be quick to tell you like, oh, you know, at this time someone played this card and they forgot this trigger, or like this should have been done like this way. It is very, very hard to play Magic in general. It is hard to play Magic when you also have cameras on you, lights on you. You're trying to be entertaining and funny and, you know, personable. You don't want to have like that stern like face on. So there's a lot going on in your mind outside of just the game. So it is very easy to make what is a simple mistake sometimes in a gameplay.
I think people just like to be first to say that, and that's some people. And sometimes I'm like, thank you for the engagement, I guess. But it's also too, we have like 2 guests that we're trying to make comfortable and have fun and like make sure that they are able to be expressive when we're playing too. Because like a lot of these people we're meeting like. Not meeting for the first time. Sometimes we are meeting them for the first time, but this might be like our first game with them. And it might be like our first like interaction, and we don't know what our banter is going to be like. Even though we know they're good online and we enjoy their company, this is like sometimes the first time, or like it's important to them to look good on somebody else's channel.
Yeah. Or, you know, sometimes like we always say too, there's certain cards that like I'll take out of my deck when I know it's recording day because they're just not entertaining. Yeah. And at the end of the day, yes, you want to watch really good Magic gameplay, but also you want to be entertained. You don't want to watch someone play a stack deck and play by themselves with 3 people just groaning. It's not fun.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that goes into these games is, you know, sometimes it might be like obvious, kill that player while you can, but we're like, that's not really going to be fun for everyone involved.
We definitely did that with our pre-con games. I kind of let Steve get away with some stuff. I'm like,
I was like, I want to see him, like, see what he could do. But it's also because we want to showcase these decks. We want to showcase the cards. We want to make sure that everyone's deck, you know, without handing someone the game, we want to make sure that it is entertaining to watch and that you could also see the different cards that are being played. Because sometimes there's cards in there that you might not know and might have not been aware of until they're played on the channel. And then you might want to see them and be like, wow, that's really cool. Wouldn't have saw it if it was that person was killed.
We don't have like a ban list or anything, but I'm kind of down to be like, no more farewells, and you get like 1 board wipe. Like, because
I'm a 1 board wipe game person. That's it. Once you board wipe, I'm done.
Yeah, it's hard, especially when it's like multiple board wipes or like things after another, because then it makes it so like nobody's doing anything, the game gets extended, and it's really hard on the shoot days where we're on a really strict like time crunch, which Ian's great too, because Ian will be like, okay, we have an hour and 30, you're at your hour mark, let's start ramping up the game. Because it's sometimes you're like, I don't want to swing at you, I want to keep my creatures back, but sometimes we're just like, fuck it, we gotta put everything out so we can get through the game. And that's another thing, like sometimes I don't think about my Winota damage because I'm like, I just have to get through this game so we can go to the next thing, and so we can make, you know, as much content as possible. We just filmed in LA, like we said, 8 games, and that's going to put us into about October with the amount of gameplay we have, which is great. And that was 2 days of shooting, which also we felt like we cheated because we went on the East Coast, so we were 3 hours ahead of time. So it was 11 for them, but it was like 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock for
us, and we were like super awake, which was great. But that kind of like is nice to know, okay, well, we can film other stuff, but we're not sweating. Like, are we going to make the release dates? Are we going to do that? The only time we are is with our podcast, which we're making sure we're doing almost every month. Yes. But it is nice to be like, okay, well, that might have sucked that we did so much time in the chair, but now we're good for a few months.
Now we're good to go.
Yeah.
While we do all of our other stuff in life.
So yeah, I guess I talked a little bit about Steve. Steve also was a good assistant for us. Steve's job was to like break down the sets in between everything, to give even a little break in between sets too. And he's also helped out with like judging behind the scenes and stuff like that. He also plays on here. So Steve and Ian, you'll see them in probably like all of our pre-con games.
We've been like doing a pre-con thing together. And like I said earlier, Steve's also been helping me build a lot of new decks for the show. Steve's an incredible deck builder. He's been playing Magic for a very long time, mostly competitive, but he loves building commander decks for fun, has infinite card knowledge. And yeah, lately I've just been saying like, hey, let's collaborate on Moxfield on a deck together. And we've been having a great time. So,
and they
a lot of my decks
for free. So if you see them in person at our MagicCon or anything, tell them thank you for their help on the show.
Yes.
Check them out. Steve says he's not a content creator, but he kind of has to tell me like his content.
He's a liar.
Anyways, let's talk about, so we talked a little bit about like types of gameplay to be avoid. We really try for that kitchen table feel. We basically said there's not like any bans on stuff here, but definitely like we let our players know like if it's past a point, let's try to not board wipe. Let's try to like shut this game down so
we
can win.
Game.
Yeah, because we all got places to be. And I think that's like, I don't know. I don't want to be the like Disney production where it's like everything is so much. I like the feel of just doing something wacky at the table.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be like, no, you can't play this card. These cards aren't allowed to be there. Like, I want people to bring things that represent them.
Yes.
But as long as it's good for the table to play.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the YouTube algorithm before we get into our viewer questions.
Sure.
This question is, or this kind of comment is so important because a lot of time people will be like, can you do X thing on YouTube? Or when we started doing ScryBabies, we made ScryBabies 60 also, which was us doing some like modern, popper, other gameplay for that, like constructed formats. And the algorithm was like, no.
Yeah, algorithm hated it. Our videos did not perform well enough to where they were worth it. I don't want to say worth it because they were fun.
Yeah.
They weren't performing at what we needed them to perform to keep them consistent.
And they also were tanking the views on our regular videos because YouTube basically says, all right, ScryBabies, you're here as a commander show. That's what you do. You do commander. You're going to put out commander videos every week. We got it. We'll boost those to other commander channels. You're doing 60 card formats. What does that mean? We don't understand.
They didn't get it, so they kind of just tanked it. And then we also had the curse of like worrying about external factors like meta shifts, ban lists, rule changes. It was just a logistical nightmare. I'm pretty sure 3 of the decks that we played on the show got banned immediately after release. We had to put like editor's notes in to say like, hey, this was filmed 3 months ago and that card is banned now, but we don't want to scrap the episode because we already paid for it. And yeah,
it was really just like a hard time. And like, so we're trying to find ways to like talk about that kind of Magic now too. So we did that recently where we talked about being competitive Magic players. I want to do kind of like constructed, not constructed, is constructed the word? Constructed, yeah. Format is like best for new players and like commander players who want to try those things. Like, I think we can have those conversations, but it's really hard for us to talk about like, I love playing Pauper. I don't get to play it enough. Tori plays Modern. I would love for us to talk about it and I would love to be a place to do it, but it just absolutely tanks our videos.
YouTube said no.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's hard for our sponsors to get behind it. It's hard for us to like make sure that our other content gets seen. So trust us when we hear you say that stuff, we want to do it. We have our own individual platforms that Tori, I know, does like a lot of modern kind of like TikToks and things like that. So you can get some of that content there. I do some CDH stuff and I'm doing some more like D&D and tabletop stuff. So you can see that there. And we try to do the podcast as more of like a personal thing. So we've talked about our history with Magic. We have more of like conversational pieces. We want to have guests on there. So that's our way to do something that's not just gameplay, but also giving you a little bit of what you're looking for. So we do hear you when you're asking for other stuff. Just know that the algorithm is really hard on us. And I mentioned earlier, the free ways to support us, super important. Making sure you have that little bell on is like really, really important. I know you hear it from every YouTuber ever. It is just like the best way to do that. So
yeah. I try to like and comment on all the videos that I see now, even if it's like somebody, I don't even get to watch the whole video yet. I'm like, I'm going to save it later, put it on my watch list, and at least throw a thumbs up on there and comment. Even if I say like, Magic is cool, something, it just helps.
It just really, really helps. Ian had like somebody go 1st, 4th, 5th, all the way down, and I was like 10th the other day, just because it's like a good way to boost things. So I love to do that. All right, so let's get into some viewer questions.
All right, so we had Shannibal. Hi, Shannibal. Shannibal asked, do you think there is an oversaturation of Magic creators? What advice would you give to a newer creator to be different?
Yes and no.
Yeah, this is a tough question because I don't want to say there's too many people doing the same thing that should uninspire someone to do it. If you want to make Commander content, if you want to make Magic content, absolutely should do it. What I will say is I think there is an oversaturation of the same type of thing. Mm-hmm. I definitely, for advice to a newer creator, I would say if you're going to make TikToks, which is where I started out, or short form content with like memes and stuff, trying to put your own spin on a lot of things definitely really helps you stand out. I see a lot of the same stuff all the time. And it's kind of hard because those kind of platforms beg you to use the same audio. You want to use a trending sound. You want to use a trending, template. But the problem is I feel like when everyone's doing the same thing, it's not special anymore.
Yeah.
Sketch comedy is great. There's people like Mark Mook Dubs who does sketch comedy. Baron does sketches. They do fantastic and they're unique and they're just fun to watch. I think putting your own spin on something like that is fantastic. But yeah, I don't necessarily want to discourage anyone from trying or getting into Magic content. I think you also just need to go into it understanding that there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So if you do not immediately have success or get 1,000 plays on your video or, 2,000 followers in the first week, it doesn't mean you'll never get there. It's just, there's a lot.
Yeah. I think that was like also some like critiques we got from people when we started. Like, I won't be like the haters, but there was some people that were unhappy with like the success of our first video because it was like, I've had a channel for this long and why isn't this doing this? And for us, it was like, well, I've been making content on the internet for a decade. I worked in marketing for a long time, so I knew how to. When we started our Twitter, I had just like a little pixelated version of a blonde character and a brown hair character. I'm like, who could this be? And like posting hints about it to like build up hype and anticipation. So we had like 2,000 followers before we even like said who we were because we were doing this thing and like engaging with people in a way that was like really witty and fun.
Yeah.
And so, like, when we did get that, that big following, people were like, oh, can you do a Patreon before we even started? And they supported the show and helped us, like, get there. And I know some people, like, people are going to feel however they want to feel about it. But to me, like, it felt a little bit bad reading that stuff because it felt like it discredited the work that we put in to get there. And we also had our own platforms for a while that we've been growing for Magic.
We did. We were both doing our thing and working really hard on it. And, I'm one of those people where if you work hard and you put in the work, their success will follow. It definitely will. Sometimes, it takes a little bit longer than others. Or, you might be thinking, like, when am I going to finally get the views I wanted on this, or when am I going to finally get a preview card, or when am I going to get invited on that channel? Just keep trying. Don't be discouraged. Sometimes it just takes a while.
It's hard not to like look at other things and feel discouraged, and I absolutely get that. And I think that people come to us for different things. Like people love listening to Tori talk about her her sports stuff or her dry humor or her fart jokes, like whatever it is. And like some people are like, wow, Tori looks like she's upset all the time because her face is like dry, like sad, but like
all the time.
It's just her face.
It's just my face. I had Lyme disease. It caused face paralysis. Leave me alone.
I didn't know that's where we were going with this.
Yeah, there's a new lore dump. Yeah, I can't wink on this side of my face or do this on that side.
Too, in general.
It is, but I had Lyme disease as a kid, and I look miserable now all the time.
Be nice story. And then, people like
it's the ticks.
My sense of humor, which is a little like wacky and silly, but I have like probably the most amount of people come up to us and say they like our channel because we're funny and we entertain them and they have a good time watching them. It feels like it's at home for them, which is what we strive to do. So with going back to the question, there is a lot of Magic channels out there. It doesn't mean that yours can't be successful. If you want to come into the space doing a podcast, there's so many ways of doing it. Like Fairy Conclave does like really great text with people. Howling Salt Mine came in. They do things with Salty Stories for Magic. Those are great. Like bringing something that feels different to the table. Like,
and sometimes, I just don't know. I have had people reach out to me and they're like, "Oh, have you ever heard of this TikTok creator?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't because it's just not in my timeline, or like maybe I just haven't seen it yet." And I'll find people on there like Magic New Girl. Her stuff's really good.
There's lots of new people. And I think that's like a great thing is that we're always having new faces in the space as more like as the set continues to develop and as Magic continues to develop and things come out, more people are going to discover it, especially with like the UB stuff. Like we're getting so many new people in here. And I always welcome that. And I always encourage people, like if you think you have something good, go for it, shoot for the stars. I encourage you as a person who's viewing content to like suggest it to your friends. Be like, hey, I saw this person, great content. I think you'll like them. That's going to help their viewership go up. And then maybe one day you'll see them doing bigger things. So, and even us, like we're in the 20K bracket. I mean, like we're not the biggest channel on YouTube, but like whenever somebody comes up to us, I feel like so humbled and like grateful that people want to just like spend hours watching our content, which is really cool. Next question is from Athena that said, this might be outside the scope question, but how do you protect your energy? It's a venture that requires putting yourself out there a lot, so I imagine it's hard to have healthy boundaries, especially when you're self-employed. The self-employed part is hard. Turning off the cameras does not mean we're turning off what we're doing for ScryBabies. It is like a roundabout, like around the clock, constantly job. We've set meetings for ourselves on Wednesdays. Sometimes that over trickles, especially when things are happening, into other days. But like trying to establish like after 7 p.m., except for recording days like right now, we're not going to talk about work. Let's try and keep it to Wednesdays. Sometimes it's an extra day because it's Survivor night now. So it's a little hard for us to, have that meeting. But with our own personal jobs, it can get really exhausting. And something we talk about a lot is like, we don't get to play Magic for fun. Despite the show being really fun, we don't ever get to like go to the LGS and play with our commander decks.
Yeah, I can't actually remember the last time I went to the LGS because, well, my dog had surgery. But aside from that, like, I just have been playing so much for the show or doing stuff for the show. I actually haven't gotten to play commander or play Magic really
Yeah.
at all because I've been so busy.
We're going to the LGS this Friday, though.
I know. I'm excited. I can't wait to go.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. You know, I work a 9-to-5 corporate job. So Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I am busy with work. And when work is over, that is when I'm drawing new designs on my iPad for the merch, the stickers, the tokens. Or, you know, I turn off my camera at the end of the month or turn off my laptop for work. And then I hop on the PC and I'm mailing out all the patron rewards at the end of the month. Or typing up some tweets and throw them in the drafts. Or, you know, I also do all of the budgeting and all of the bookkeeping. So I have to take time to make our budget sheet, make our rate sheet, and, you know, process all of our invoices. And it's basically like another full-time job.
It is like another full-time job. So I think it's important to, like, for me, I'm always that person that's like, if I start like feeling like something's too much and I don't love it anymore, I'm not going to do it. And I don't ever want that to happen with Magic because it's brought me so much joy and I haven't felt like that yet. And I'm hopeful that I'm not going to feel like that. So I think keeping a degree of separation where like we do get to play like tournaments. We do get to, you know, go to the LGS when we can. I have way too many shows as a guest appearancing for like other stuff that I'm doing, like cosplay modeling, TCG stuff. So I haven't been able to go to a pre-release since like New Phyrexia or March of the Machines was like the last thing I did.
Yeah.
And so I'm so excited that like I got to play it at Command Fest last weekend. I got to open a sealed kit and I got to play and I drafted exactly what I wanted to and it was awesome. And then I got to play Commander with a bunch of people and it was really fun because like at Command Fest, it was a lot easier than MagicCon where it's like no time to play it because we're working. And so going to the LGS is like my favorite thing to do. I love doing it. I'm really excited that we're doing it. So having a degree of separation from Magic where it can be that fun thing, I think is really important for the two of us. And as business partners too, we make sure to have like friend dates. Like today before we recorded, we went out to lunch together or dinner together.
Yeah, we got dinner, we hung out, we watched Survivor on Wednesdays. We talk about other stuff outside of work and outside of Magic. And also doing this shoot days, like the one for LA really helped because now we're like, all right, like we don't have to record again until the middle of May. And then after that, we have something in the summer. But like a lot of our free time is freed up by doing these big shoots all at the same time.
It makes it worth it.
So we don't have to worry about dedicating so much time to just recording. Now it's just all the back end stuff, which is still a lot of work, but then we have, you know, our own time for our own lives back, which is great.
Yeah, and we're losing a couple hours, you know, today and yesterday, not really losing, but like to do these podcasts, but now we could send it to our editors and we don't have shit to do until like June and we have a guest coming this month, so like we'll film, but that stuff again is already in October. So we're doing really good with our like scheduling stuff. It's just when everything's close together like this, because our schedules and because we travel and we have family events and we have personal events and work things, it's sometimes a lot at once. So taking time for ourselves to enjoy Magic, taking our time together as friends to enjoy being in our space so we're not just work focused all the time is something that's really important to the two of us.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing to note too. We've talked about this before in like other podcast episodes, but like as a creator, it's a great thing to learn is to say no to things if you're not feeling it or if you do feel overworked. I feel bad because a lot of times I'll get asked to be on someone's stream, you know, like, oh, I have a schedule. I've opened streams this month. I'd love to have you on our show on Twitch. And unfortunately, a lot of times I have to decline. And it doesn't mean like, I'm too busy, I can't do it. It's just, I know that I have such minimal time right now that I cannot do it because I will be overwhelmed and stressed out because I don't have so much time right now. So don't feel bad saying no to things that are going to cost you your mental energy.
For sure. I think that's like been a hard learning lesson in my entire time creating content. But yeah, as far as like protecting your peace goes, like that is a big one, like giving yourself that space and also just like not overwhelming yourself with a lot of events, which I tend to do looking at my calendar. It's a lot. And knowing that like, at least for me, I love knowing that I have a partner in this, like somebody that could be like, fuck, this week is really heavy. Can you take on this workload or vice versa? Or like, hey, can you help me sort this thing? I'm feeling really stressed out about it. Let's talk through this together. Like having an additional person is the best thing ever. For people who have individual channels by themselves, like I don't know what to say about that. I would say make a good schedule for yourself, take care of your mental health, like really pay attention to what you're doing. But for me, knowing that I have a partner that I can trust in this and that I feel safe with, and like our boyfriends are wonderful and help us with whatever we need on set, like those things to me
very
make
important.
It just like the weight is off our shoulders. And we have a great editor. Our editor is like, any notes we have, we're like, please fix us. They do it right away. They're also our good friend. We make sure to like, you know, have established friendships with them. We had like a team meeting and we went to an escape room and got dinner together at the end of the year also, and that was really nice with everybody. So like making sure that we make them also know how appreciative they are as like staff, even though no one's getting paid besides Mod because they're our editor. Hi, Mod. showing them in other ways as we can. And maybe one day ScryBabies will be big enough where we can have like a full team and like, you know, grow bigger. Yeah. And do all the things that we want to do.
ScryBabies, the Amazon-sized corporation.
It's just a giant baby.
Big baby building that moves with a
But
rattle.
yes, so there's always room for growth. I'm grateful for where we are. I think it's a good place to leave off this conversation. If you do have questions about content and that, you can ask us in the comment section below. We'll try to get to those. I am going to put a nice like Amazon link. So I think there's a way to do like a business Amazon one. So if you shop with our stuff, we can get referrals and it can help us with the show. So if you want to check that out. And if you have any questions about any of the topics we discussed today, you could ask them. Or if you have new questions for us, maybe we could do another video of like, I really want to film like us start to finish in a day and show what that's like.
Yeah, day in the life.
A full day in the life video, so you could see that too, because that's been something we've talked about. So, and if you have any other suggestions for podcast episodes, we're always taking them. We're always doing new stuff. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I think that's it.
I think that's it. I think that's all we have to say. Thank you so much for listening and for watching if you're watching this on YouTube. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.